Remnant from the Ashes, one of PlayStation's free games of the month for March. Is it a good game, or should it have stayed on the shelf collecting dust? Today, I think we're going to answer that question, at least for us here on the night shift. But let's go find out. Oh, and one more thing. Welcome to the night shift. Let's get you guys clocked in. Alrighty. It is Review Friday, and it is Logan, and I'm joined with Alan and Evan, and we're here to review one of PlayStation's free games of the month, Remnant from the Ashes. You guys there with
No.
me? Oh, listen, you do this every
I
time.
am here.
It's part of my unique charm.
Okay, alright. So, I already know before even talking to you guys, this one's going to be interesting because we all three played at different times. Like I played this game when it first like released for consoles. I can't say for sure if it was when it first released. I'd have to double check myself on that one, but I know I played it when it first came out on console. And then I kept hassling you, Evan, about it for months on end until you finally got it and downloaded it, and then we played for a while. And then you just got it not too long ago, right, Alan?
Yes, of my own volition. Nobody told me to get it. Nobody was like, hey, you should get this game. I was just like, huh. I heard people talk about this game. I'm
Yeah.
gonna try it.
So let's just start with how long have you guys been playing? I mean, I know for me personally, I've probably got a solid, like, I would say 100 hours in, just because I've played the game almost fully through twice. I've yet to beat the final boss. It's just that much of a pain, and I just have played a bunch of like the challenge series areas, and I've done more playthroughs with like Evan and Connor. I've put a lot of time into it.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I've not come anywhere close to that. I think the only time that I really played it was when you, Logan, and your brother and I were playing back last year. That was about maybe 5 or 6 hours, and then another 2 or 3 hours yesterday. So, so
So like
about maybe 8 hours.
8. Okay, that's fair. What about you, Alan?
So, for the first time on the channel, I don't have the least experience in game. I've been playing for roughly 10 to 12 hours, maybe a little more.
Wow. I'm a little surprised. I thought Evan had a little bit more time than that. So
Maybe I do, but I don't remember how long it's been.
yeah,
He
it's
does,
been
but he
it
doesn't care.
yeah, it's been a while. So yeah.
I'm
Um.
seeing.
So how are we feeling about it? Because I know. I feel a
This
little bit
game is
different.
sexy.
See, I feel a little bit different about it now than I think I did when I originally played it, and that kind of sucks. But at the same time, it's the part of the course of games, and because this is a re-review, it also makes sense, I think. But I still enjoyed the game. I just noticed some things that I couldn't help but compare it to other things. So, but still a very good game.
Um, well, overall, I'd say it's a decent game. I actually do have to agree with you that once you start pointing it out, I did start seeing the similarities between other games that I've played. Uh, I would say for what it is, it's pretty all right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
It's a pretty good game.
oh yeah, for sure. I like it. It was an interesting. It was probably one of the first like roguelike games that I really solidly got into. Um, I've always had a problem with just like getting into those roguelikes because I don't know, just seems a little too. I don't know. It just seems too punishing for me. Like I don't like the idea of like, oh, I died, I got to start all the way at the beginning. This kind of takes that, but doesn't punish you nearly as hard unless you want it to. You could do it that way, but that would suck.
Would it though? Would it?
Uh, I mean, if you had all the stuff I did, yeah, 100%.
But there were other games like this that were more fun.
Well, fair enough.
Well, not more fun than this game. Honestly, I never really liked those games, anyways. Um, they made me very angry back in a time where I did not try to limit myself on what I said. I was usually cursing up a storm at those games. I
Fair
may or may
enough.
not have snapped one of them in half.
I mean, I don't blame you. I mean, that's the problem with roguelikes. They get so bad because it's just like you get so frustrated. But that's the thing I liked about this game. I felt like it was a nice happy medium. Like you get that challenge in spots, but then in other spots it's a breeze. So you kind of have like a little bit of a respite before you're on the verge of death again.
I can agree with that.
But anyways, if you haven't joined us for our reviews before, here's how we're going to do things. We're going to go and we're going to judge it on four different categories. We're going to talk about story, gameplay, audio and visuals, and then any bugs or issues that we ran across the way. And we will come up with our general overall score at the end of the video. If you want just our general overall idea of the video, I'll add a little timestamp in the description. So then that way you can skip right ahead to just our overall description. So by no means feel like you have to see our detailed, like our actual detailed review here, because it will be pretty long. So, but that being said, let's jump right into story. So for me, story wise, I feel like it, it's not the most engaging story because there were times where the grind becomes more like your focus. But I did like the fact that the story was there and it's what you were working towards the whole time almost. And then turn around and, you know, it was engaging when you were in those story moments. It was like, oh, not to mention that you're always picking up like lore and different stuff that pertain to different things that you didn't necessarily know about at the time. What do you
I
guys think?
can. I
Yeah.
think I can agree with that. I mean, there was a. I agree with the fact that the story isn't all that isn't as engaging because it's kind of broken up and there's not a lot of. There's really not a lot of continuity with it. And continuity is not the perfect word, but it's
it's not like back to back to back. Like it's not like you're constantly reminded that you're playing a
Yeah,
story.
it's broken up, and it's hard to get a read on exactly what you're trying to exactly what the game story is. I would say.
That's fair. That's fair.
I'm not gonna lie. When I play these looter games, I don't make it very far in the story very fast at all, and I definitely haven't made it very far in the story. I'm in the second area. I'm in the desert area,
No, okay,
and
okay,
barely in that in as it is. So
okay. Yeah, I understand. That's actually not too bad, especially for like I think a 10 hour um playthrough. That's what I'm saying, Evan. I think you have more hours in this than you think you do, because Evan, you and I are,
Probably you may be
because
right because we did go all
however,
the way. We went all the way to that swamp area. So
I
yeah,
mean, the thing is though, I am that guy that will literally search every square inch of every area. And this game really does reward you for that kind of a game, for that kind
oh
of a
yeah,
play style.
oh yeah, for sure.
Like I found armor I never would have found if I did not sit there and work extremely diligently on doing one specific puzzle. Because that one specific puzzle was a pain because it would summon three entities that I've never seen in the game before that point,
Ye
and I'd have to fight them every time I failed that puzzle.
Not gonna lie, be prepared for a lot of those, because you're pretty much every like dungeon that you go in now is gonna have a ton of those.
Well, the dungeon puzzles aren't that hard. It was the fact that this was just a random puzzle in the world that if you
Oh
were
yeah,
even that if you weren't paying attention
you would miss
even
it.
for the slightest moment, you would miss the whole puzzle.
Oh yeah, the
Like you
first time I played through, I I missed it, and I didn't realize I had missed it until later when I came back through that world, and I stood on the platform on the right one, and it was like it activated, and I was like, wait, what just happened?
Yeah,
And
when I
I'm
see a grid pattern like that, my first thought, because of playing a specific game, Tomb Raider, is immediately goes to puzzles. Like,
oh yeah,
oh, this is probably a pressure plate puzzle. I'm gonna check it out. So I stepped on every square in that puzzle until I got to that center point, and then I was like, oh, I feel stupid because it was right there by the center point, the start of the puzzle. So I literally spent like 10 minutes just traipsing around the outside edge and working my way in until I hit that one. And then it
ugh,
took me like 3 or 4 attempts to get it right because there's actually a pattern that you can follow. Um, you can kind of tell which ones are the right ones based on, like I said, I'm in a desert area based on the amount of sand on the platform.
yeah, yeah.
And
So
I mean, it's not that intuitive, but at the same time, it's not exactly easy because, it's difficult to describe, but yeah, it's a looter game. You have to search. You have to focus on searching if you want to
oh
have
yeah,
better gear and be ready to face the enemies you're going to face.
oh yeah, and I completely agree. And the fact that they went, I mean, since we're already kind of on this topic, we'll kind of go ahead and switch over to just gameplay talk. I mean, I uh I feel like it's an interesting dynamic, especially when this first came out, because it was like not only is it a looter shooter and you're shooting enemies to get drops that drop you know materials for you to make your weapons better, and you're searching the world for items that will help you progress through the match, whether it be like healing items or buffs to prevent certain debuffs from happening, stuff like that. It's constantly you're searching around and doing stuff, and it, it takes like I'll just breeze through this world really quick to like, well, I'm searching this world from top to bottom, and I'm gonna find everything, and you end up finding more than I think you bargained for, because in the end, all you do is you end up helping yourself not only in just those, but then you got the skill tree based thing. I mean, I don't even know if I call it a skill tree. It's more like you just have these cards that you level up that'll ultimately make your character uber powerful. What are you thinking, Evan?
I mean, again, I can say I agree. I don't know why I can't pin it down, but for some reason I'm just not as enthused by this game as I was, say, Outriders. Maybe it's because it's an older game and it's
I, you know,
not that. I don't know. It seems like I can pin it down. I honestly can't pin it down, but I'm just not as enthused, and I can't understand why. Maybe it's just
I,
for the simple fact that it is a roguelike, because I'm not exactly all that fond of them.
yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, and I mean, technically, Outriders almost falls into that. They're not quite. I'm not, and I would feel like Outriders falls more into that looter shooter category than the roguelike, just because I mean you're facing up enemies, and then you get to story. You know, you might not necessarily face a boss. I mean, and again, all of this is speculative because we've
Well,
only had
actually, you know what? I would like to think that maybe I have a thing, and you're probably going to be an "I told you so" moment for you. But I think maybe the fact that I'm not all that enthused about the game is because it just doesn't have a very strong story aspect to it. Because I mean, to give the game its due, the gameplay isn't really. I really don't have much of a problem with the gameplay, apart from the from for the bugs that we found. But as far as gameplay is concerned, it's pretty solid. It's just I
yeah.
think the thing that kills it for me is the fact that is the lack of a really engaging story.
Well, and I mean, I can agree with you to some extent with it. I mean, because I feel like when the story's there and you're reminded of the story, it's engaging and it's interesting to me, at least, anyways. Like I like the whole
Right, but
idea of
it's
this
just not. You don't really see it. I mean, once it gets to the point, the grind becomes. I mean,
everything.
the
Yeah,
grind
and
becomes
then
all consuming eventually, and that's kind of the problem with these roguelites.
well,
That
and then there's even a
you can
certain
play it, yeah,
point.
if it has a great story, but if they don't focus on the story for any decent length of time, it just gets replaced by the grind. And I guess some could argue that every game nowadays is like that. But
True. I don't know. I mean, I get what you're saying, like, because I kept seeing that comparison a lot too, cause especially since I think it was just last week we did that Outriders demo review, and
mhm.
I kept looking at it and I was like, I mean, aside from the enemies, we're really it feels the same. I mean, I'm shooting hordes of enemies, and if I die, I go back to the last checkpoint that I saved at, and I lose all the stuff I got. So that's where I was at when it was like, it's kind of roguelike. But the only reason why I hesitate with it being a full on roguelike is because, this one it's like you have the enemies, then you have mini bosses that punish you, and then you have all these debuffs and all that to hopefully be able to take on the big boss. Whereas I feel like Outriders is like, okay, you can't take on these guys. It's because your gun is a gray tier when you need a green tier. So you just got to kill more enemies in the world, and you'll get a green tier. And then once you have a green tier, you can go kill these guys easily.
Mhm.
That
Again,
that
I
was
guess that's one thing I don't like is when they have the gray tier, the when your efficiency is hampered by the tier of weapon you happen to have. And I mean that's a really bad thing because I know that that's one of the things that
true.
you and I both agreed was really bad with that Far Cry New Dawn.
Oh, for sure.
But hey, let me interject on that real quick, especially on this game. The counterbalance to that, it not having the right strength or tier of weapon, is at any time if you hit a checkpoint, you can fast travel back to the
Hmm.
starting area and go
The
upgrade
hub
your
world.
gear.
Oh yeah, and I think that
That is
that
true.
mechanic, and I think that that mechanic is a really good idea because all that material that you gather as you go through each of these worlds, you can use to upgrade your armor and your gun. And you actually, I don't know if you noticed it yet, Alan, but when you go,
Upgrade your guns.
well, when you upgrade your guns and your armor and stuff, but whenever
They
you
get
go,
unique looks
that
and they look
too.
pretty.
But when you go back to the world that you're at, you can
Hmm.
actually go to your start menu, like, and look at your character, and you can actually toggle advanced stats, and it'll show you roughly how you stand in terms of that world, offensively and defensively.
Hmm.
And
Didn't know that.
yeah, and it gets really
That's
detailed.
interesting.
I mean, because you'll have like your armor, like in a number basis, the weight that you're dealing with, which
Oh, I didn't know there was an encumbrance on this game. That's interesting to know.
yes, very much so. If you wear all heavyweight, you'll basically move and dodge like a duck.
Eh.
I I tend to go with the medium because you get more armor, but you still have that mobility to
Yeah,
really
that's what I'm
dodge.
running right now is a medium class.
Yeah.
Even though the tank's supposed to be heavy, it really doesn't make much of a difference. If you want to run medium, you can run medium and still be just as effective.
Oh yeah.
Because trust me, even as the tank, you ain't taking a lot of damage.
No, but here's the other thing too is you have to keep an eye on your resistances because it like I can attest for a fact that your resistances really affect how you end up playing the game because my first playthrough I didn't pay attention to none of that and I just kind of equipped what I wanted and I got my butt handed to me every single time. And
So I'm not going to give a specific name, but does this by chance remind anyone of a another specific game set? Like, has anybody had like flashbacks to a certain game that starts with D and ends with Destiny?
to
Not
some degree.
particularly, no.
I mean, to some
I've
degree,
had
yeah.
flashbacks to that when I'm going through the portals and stuff. Like, I see the Vex gates and things like that. And, like,
Yeah.
this desert area, I see the Cabal in these enemies I'm facing now, for
I mean,
sure.
I see that. I see it, yeah. And then like the the flying enemies, I always kind of was like, "Oh, that's like oh, the yeah, the Vex." Like they were, like
The Harpies.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I was like, "Oh, yeah."
But
Um
back
yeah,
to what you guys were talking about with the it's a grind and you can lose the story in that. You have to be one of two types of players. You have to be that all grind all the time type of player, in my opinion, where your main focus is the grind, and
mhm.
then you play the story after you've gotten that through that grind, and you feel like you can handle the game and the story.
Mhm.
Like you have to go through that grind until you feel like you can handle the progression to the next area, and then grind that area, and then play the story, so that you can fully engage in the story. Or you have to be one of those people where you can multi-focus and remember the story while you're doing the grind, and you can remember the story and know that this grind is helping you achieve that goal that the story has given you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd almost say you're I mean, dead on. And I mean, it's kind of funny because I almost feel like I would consider myself the second one that you said, whereas like I'm multitasking, I'm remembering that there's a story and that I'm grinding so that I can progress through the story, rather than just like I'm a hardcore grinder and I just want to grind to get uber powerful. But even doing that, I don't know. it was hard for me to really get invested in the story. Because there were times where it's just like, well, I don't really care about having you know, the best weaponry or best armor. I just want to get to the next story, you know, bit.
I mean,
For
I think
sure.
I can agree with that, but it's like I
I
said,
feel
I can
I,
grind. I'm not afraid of the grind, but
I feel
not
like personally,
necessarily.
I feel like it would have been better if they'd added some side story to this, where your grind was actually a story of its own,
Oh
sort of.
yes,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah, oh
Like where
yeah.
they'd added like side quests to make the grind more, make you feel like you're achieving something more than just boosting up your character.
I agree. I think that would have helped immensely. Because then you would have felt like you had purposes, like kind of like how Outriders was again. And I hate comparing it to it, but I mean, like even just in that demo, like you didn't just go out to grind, to get materials. You went out and you played missions that had reasons, and when you took out enemies, you picked up stuff that helped you along the way. That I think would have helped this a bunch if it was just like, oh yeah, you've got this mission, while you're here. Okay, yeah, sure, I'll go do that. It helped me grind, and I get to see some more story about this particular world because these worlds are really cool and interesting, and I wanted to know more about it. And there are some pretty interesting characters in the game.
I mean, I do have to put one thing
Mm.
into. I do have to interject one more thing, and that's the fact that this was and is considered an indie game. This was an indie
That's true.
release.
That's true. That's very true. And for that being an indie game, I mean, it is I mean, you know, number one game, in my eyes. I mean, it was when I got to it and to now, it hasn't changed a whole bunch, but it's still it's been fun from point A to point B.
Oh yeah, and for an indie game to do this well and include this much, like make the game the what this game is so far, um, that takes a lot of work, dedication, and effort, and
Hmm.
definitely a massive amount of skill. And
Especially for an independent developer.
Oh yeah,
yes, and
because you're
along
talking.
with that, even though the story is lacking, if you will, that doesn't make it necessarily bad. I mean,
No,
the
no.
fact that the
That's
story's
true.
lacking is all right, especially considering that it's an indie game. And you know, this is somebody's preface that they came up with out of their own brain. It's not like they had a huge team working on it with a massive, massive budget. Like,
True.
you know,
Yeah, true.
I
I
understand. Yes, and again, I agree with that. But I do want to try and qualify that statement in the fact that while I do think that indie developers deserve a little bit more leeway than the AAA industries, I also think we should point out that we shouldn't be excuse absolutely everything that comes out of the indie market because there are a lot of. I mean, I'm sure that there are plenty of indie games. I can't think of any off the top of my head that are just pretty egregious.
Well, and that's a different. I mean, that's a completely different topic. But the whole point of the matter is, this was a small team that came in, wanted to do this game, and then they came in, and
Yeah,
I
you're absolutely
would.
right, and that's true. And for what it is, like I said, I know I said that I'm not too terribly enthused about this game, but for what it is, giving it all fairness and credence for what the game is and who developed it and the resources they had, it's a pretty decent game. It's very decent. It's
Oh
not
yeah,
my top. It's not in my top tier, but definitely it's definitely up there.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, I know audio and visual wise, I would say that this game, especially for the time it came out and it being a indie developer, I think visually it I almost feel like where it lacks in necessarily like um, details, like in newer games like Outriders, it makes up for in little animations that Outriders failed in. Because
Mm.
I know when we were playing the Outriders demo, I complained about the smoke and with the fires and stuff. And these are small details that very few people probably pay attention to, but I enjoy the small details.
I
But
have
like,
another anecdote. I just noticed it, or I just found it,
mhm.
and I really like this little thing they added in. So it's very rare in games um, to see enemies that do damage when they hit each other,
Oh yeah.
but I just had an enemy standing in front of another enemy, and that
Hmm.
enemy got hit by essentially its teammate,
Yeah.
and it lost a major amount of health.
Oh yeah. And that's always kind of fun because you can use the, especially like for when you're in a boss fight, you can use that against the little grunts.
Yeah, and
Yeah, it was
another
smart.
new little thing that's, you know, that separates this game from the pack. Like that's an oversight that a lot of developers have
Yep,
is
and I
enemies
actually can
hurting
agree
other
with that.
enemies.
I can really
Yeah.
agree with that because it provides two two major purposes, gameplay altering uh,
Yeah.
facts. One, the fact that it adds a bit of realism. I mean, it adds a
Hmm.
fair bit of realism to the the gameplay mechanics. Plus, it's rewarding. It rewards the more what's the word, crafty players in being able to use your enemy's own
Yeah,
damage output against them.
for sure. And then like not to mention all the abilities that can really be game changers. You know, you know, depending
Oh
on how
yeah.
you use them. Because I know, like not trying to spoil anything, but I know like I have an ability that literally summons a black hole, and I can once once I summon it, enemies will get sucked into it, and then it explodes and deals a very large area of effect damage. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's a really good crowd control deal. But like I was saying about audios and visuals, I don't know how much you guys paid attention to it, but I looking at little details like the fact that like when you're in the desert region, right, you'll see little specks of like the sand flying across the screen
Yep. Yep. Yep.
and the wind trails. The fact that the smoke isn't just pouring from fire, it's little plumes of smoke, and they'll come at different little intervals, the shadows, and the fact that they put so much work into your shadow with the sun, like the sun and other lights, like all those little details visually, like really get me immersed, like solidly, because then I'm like, okay, yeah, this is a world like that I am invested in and fully in. Not to mention the noises, which play like all the audio, like they play a vital role into this game. I feel like this game just excelled, especially back when it came out. Because let me double check something real quick. Because I'm pretty sure this is older than initially thought it was.
It came out a while back on PC before it ever ported to console.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure it came out quite a while ago. Da, 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 da.
Mm-hmm. And again, while Logan's looking at that, I just want to say I know that I think
Oh,
we're still on the graphics and or the audio
or
visual
not
thing, but
really.
I would say there was a glitch. What was that? Logan, what was that glitch that we found? yesterday when we were doing the
We found several.
footage recording. Yeah, there were a bunch of them, and I think it's fair that we make mention of those,
Okay,
particularly since it'll be in
it's
the
actually
it
it's
might be
actually
in the gameplay footage.
In certain areas, there are
yes.
teleporters. If you try to teleport with more than two people on the teleporter, the first person to teleport will die.
I haven't had that glitch.
I neither have I. Oh yeah, I
Uh,
remember what that glitch was that you ran into. It was the glitch where the
yeah, I had.
what is it, the revival, or is it the travel prompt,
Well,
or is it the
it's
revive
the
prompt?
it. Um, it can be either or, but I can't remember exactly which one it was. But basically, it was like waiting for other player. When it says that on the screen, it it didn't go away when we left the crystal, and so I had that on my screen while I was trying to play. So it's a minor inconvenience because now that's in the way of where I'm trying to look, but it's not necessarily like a do or die thing. Here it is. It actually came out later than I think any of us thought. It's it came out August 20th of 2019.
Hmm.
That was
Hmm.
its initial release. So I mean, yeah, I mean, bugs wise, I feel like we had that one. I know we've had in the past, and I ran into it by myself, where like I would go to try and talk to a vendor, and the prompt wasn't coming up, so you couldn't talk to the vendor. But like the way that you could talk to him is like you had to like put your like radical right on him, and then like kind of like squat and like really find that box, and then you'd finally could hit it eventually. It's just like little things like that. Not to mention like I found like when because like a good way to get extra scrap per area is to like destroy anything that's breakable, and that's like usually like wood.
Everything.
Yeah, and that's usually like wood items and stuff like that. But I found that like whenever you're trying to hit those, like especially like in the Earth world, like chairs and tables and stuff, some of those don't register the hitbox, and so then they just like they're invincible for like 3 or 4 hits, and then they finally go, "Oh, I'm supposed to break," and then they break. So I mean, it's just little bugs like that. Nothing that's like game breaking or anything like that that I've seen, anyways. But it was still like little quality of life stuff that just was like, oh, well, if they'd fix that later, it'd be better. But the fact that this is, I guess, only a 2-year-old game, you know, I would say it's, you know, still fairly well done. Let's get down to it and break down and do our overall, right? So story, I know we all said that it was pretty decent and we enjoyed it for when it was there. Um, I'll kick us off. I kind of feel like story wise, I enjoyed what I saw, and it made me want to play more when I got it. So I'll give it a 6. I feel like that's fair.
Well, for me, as far as story, well, I agree with you and what you're saying. The story is decent for what it's there. For what is there, you gotta have something there to actually. You can't. You can't run the game off of just bits and pieces of something and just have the player assume that there's something there. Granted, it's possible you could do that based on like having speculation or having the player's imagination run away with them or imagine things. And again, I guess you could say that'd be fun, but for me, I can't grade something that's not there, so I'm gonna have to go with for a 5 for story.
That's fair. I understand. Yeah. I mean, Yeah.
So I'd have to say the story for the story. Uh, as far as I played it, I'd have to give the story itself roughly a 7. The game, graded by its story, I'd have to say probably a 4 to a 5. Somewhere in
Hmm.
there. Because, like we said, the story is lacking in the game. The story's great when the story's there, like you said, but
Hmm.
it's lacking in the game.
Yeah.
So
So we
overall,
got
I think I'm going to give it like a 5,
okay.
6.
So we got 5, 6, and possibly another
Five and a
5.
half.
Yeah, 5.5. So we'll just 5.5 for the story. Which I mean, I feel like that's fair. I mean, the story was good when it was there, but like I think like we've iterated several times. It's like it just disappears, and unless you keep it in the back of your mind the whole time, you kind of forget about it. So, what about gameplay? Uh, I feel like this one might be where this game kind of tends to shine a little bit.
Oh,
Um,
for me, oh, go ahead.
taking taking what this game plays like, the specific series that this game plays like, with the mechanics. Um, I'm gonna say it took those mechanics and it adapted them into a much less punishing version and made the game that much more fun to play. So I'm gonna give this one an 8, 9 on gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. Yeah, I think I can see where you're coming from there. It made it a more enjoyable experience. Yeah, for sure. I get exactly what you're saying.
Mm. For me, I actually can really see where Alan's coming from, and to be honest, if I'm going to get rid of my put the biases aside from it, I can actually see where he's coming from. I'm somewhat inclined to agree, but I don't want to give it too much of a too much of a boost. But the gameplay for what it is fun, it's engaging, it's challenging, but it's not too challenging. So I'd say in my thing, I actually would have to agree with
I
Alan and go
don't
with an 8.
an 8. That's good. Okay. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good score there. I don't think we actually talked about it at all during the video. But I know our gameplay shows a little bit of it. But yeah, this is a co-op game. I think what it's up to 3.
I thought it was up to 4, but I
Is
could
it
be
up to
wrong.
4? I don't know. It's like 3 or 4. But yeah, that also adds, I think, a level of another level, I think, for its gameplay, right? Because not only do you get to play, can you play by yourself, but then you can play with your friends, which I just feel like is a new thing, right? Yeah, we've always been able to play with your friends, split screen mode and all that stuff back in the past, but now being able to play with your friends and like you have the whole screen and being able to play no matter where they are, right? I just think that's so important. But I'm going to say gameplay wise for me, I think I I agree with kind of what both you're saying. On one hand, I love the gameplay. It's interesting. It feels right to me. Um, and it makes it easier for me to get into a game like this that normally does punish you. But on the other hand, I tend to compare it to other things. So I I was going a little lower than you guys. I was going to say a 7.5, but overall you guys both said 8. So I think uh, it gets basically an 8 on gameplay.
Well,
True,
I
I
gave
would
it
like
an
to interject.
8.5. Evan gave it an 8. You gave it a 7.5. So again, it balances out at 8.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like to interject, Logan, with what you're saying. I understand what you're saying about it making you reminding you of other games, but the thing is, since we're doing a re-review of this game, it is an older game, And I think
Yeah,
that I
but
don't really think we should.
even in during the times that it was there though too. So like, cause you had like during that time, right? You still had Destiny and stuff like that, and it reminds you of certain aspects of that too. So
Right, and well,
it's not necessarily
this is where I'm going to be talking about the whole defending the indie developers now and saying, well, this was made by an independent developer that
true.
doesn't have the resources that it able to really compete with the AAA industry as far as like
True.
unbelievable graphics and flawless mechanics are concerned.
True.
Well,
True.
again, and if we're going with that, and if we're running with that, then you got to think this indie developer, what they took and put into their game could be mechanics and visuals and reminders from their favorite games. Like it,
True.
you know,
True.
and
Very
this,
true.
this is their brainchild, and this is, their creation, but what they played or what they enjoyed could have had a major impact on this and an effect on how they created and did the game, which full kudos to them. And I that kind of gave it a boost in my opinion, because it made me think, hey man, I had so much fun on these games and I liked these visuals, I liked the way those games played, and I liked those games so much.
Mm.
Not only did it bring a nostalgic feeling in for me, seeing these visuals that reminded me of those games, but it was like, hey, man, maybe I should go back and give that game another play. Or, you know, it just kind of brings you back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I completely agree with you guys on the fact that you constantly have to come back to the fact that it is an indie developer, and they did what they did because we can't necessarily say, but whatever they did for whatever reason, it only served to help the game, and I feel like even my score reflects that. Even though I think I'm the lowest out of the three of us, I feel like I gave it a score I feel like is because the gameplay does feel so good and smooth, and it's just me being stingy about whether or not I feel like you know games are gonna get better or not. But that being said, um, let's move on to audios and visuals. Okay, so audio and visuals. On one hand, I'm a little torn, and on the other hand, I'm a little um, I don't know. I'm a little confused on both here, because I I like the audio cues that it gives you and the music and everything like that. It feels really well for this world, and I like the little animations that you get and how the world looks. Mm. Yeah, I mean honestly, if I'm gonna be honest, I feel like this world's just really well put together. I mean, I've been kind of debating it for a while, just trying to figure out how I feel about it. But the fact that you have an indie developer and they've put the amount of detail that they have into this world, you know, it, I think it's crazy.
Yeah, I'm one to agree.
Oh yeah. I wholeheartedly, fully, thoroughly agree there, because if there are those sections where there's holes in the map, and if you look
Mm.
down, like the map border is sometimes just cut off by a sheer drop. And if you look down on some of the sections, especially in this desert area where it looks like it was this massive city, and you look down, it's not just a grayed out cutoff, like maybe a 40, 50 feet down. No, it's like you can still see way down, and you can see bare bones of these buildings that have fallen into these crevices and sinkholes and like yeah, like the amount of detail and render distance of the game itself is absolutely insane. Like even just the backdrops themselves are gorgeous.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just looking at like instances like where like in Ward 13, for instance, right? When you come in um, to the main spot, you can literally see where the paint has chipped up and the metal has rusted, like the little spots of rust on it. To
Yep.
me, to me, that's a detail that they didn't necessarily have to have, but they said, no, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna do it right, and they did, and it just that is something that, in my opinion, is crazy. And not to mention, this is something that I think is crazy because, as far as I'm aware, this has not gotten any next gen upgrades. But they've been talking up a lot of hype about ray tracing and how it it makes for better shadows and better like light bouncing off of stuff. But I mean, the amount of work they had to put in for like because you'll see water here and there, and like you can see light bounce off of stuff. You know, they even like crazy thing like even just like ambient lights, they'll bounce off of them. Is it perfect? No, but I mean the fact that they put that in there is crazy to me because it's a level of detail that took them a lot of time and a lot of effort, and it adds to that immersion. And I feel like score wise, I think you know my score at least is going to show my appreciation for that at least.
I agree, and again, I know I said that we should qualify our unmitigated praise for the indie circuit, but from what all you're saying, I mean, that would have taken, depending on the size of the team they had, which generally independent developers have pretty small teams, that would have taken a lot of time and a lot of man hours to actually get anything close to what they were doing implemented, and I do have to respect that.
Oh yeah, that's like I can't give the developers and creators of that game anything but props and kudos. Like they have earned nothing but good remarks from me, and if they release another game, I feel like I'm fairly inclined to want to get it because the amount of energy, effort, and detail that they implement, yeah, it like I feel like if they keep that level up, anything that they come out with is gonna be uh, well worth it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think here's where I'm at. Right, I feel like even though I said like gameplay, I think was going to be their high, like the where they shine and stuff. I don't know. I feel like this one might get a little bit of a higher score for me because I feel like the fact of the matter is it's a small team, but the world, especially in 2019, is so detailed. I mean, I almost am willing to give this an 8.5. You know, just on the visuals alone, let alone the fact that the audios were. I mean, as far as I can tell, they didn't have any audio sync issues or anything like that. It was just, I mean, I would say maybe the occasional like render issue visually, but audio wise, I think they nailed it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I'm willing to definitely agree with that. And for what I saw, again, I don't really pay attention to a lot of those major details, but I know you, Logan, and I know that you don't say anything that you don't actually see, you don't actually believe. So based on what you're saying, I mean, I think I'll be a little bit more conservative in my rating, just because I didn't really pay attention to it. But I think I'll go with like a 7.5 because of the
Oh,
fact that, again, even though, again, for its own merits, it is pretty amazing, but it just still, I just didn't really see all that much to it, and I don't want to give it more praise than I can qualify.
yeah, I understand. So, where are you at, Alan?
I'm shooting for an 8,
8?
you know? Yeah, I'm thinking this game is well deserving of an probably an 8 on its visuals and its sound because uh all of the enemies, like each group of enemies that you face, even the little offshoot enemies that you may never face in the main quest lines that you find in the dungeons, they're uniquely animated or uniquely voiced, so they have their own unique sounds to each different type of enemy. And it's not just some stock enemy sound that you would find, you know?
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So I'm going to shoot for an 8. Along with the visuals that you already discussed and what I've already said and stated, I'm going to have to shoot for, like I said, an 8.
Yeah. I would definitely agree. Which is crazy because that puts that, I had an 8.5, you had an 8, Evan, you had a 7.5. So that puts this at I would say a solid 8. And so then you got two eights, a and a 6 for Remnant. 6 on story, an 8 on gameplay, and an 8 on audio and visuals. So it would round out to 7.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's well deserved. Honestly, I mean, it's a fun game. I know we played a lot of it, at least for me, and I know Connor's played it. Evan, you've played it. I mean, heck, Alan, you got it. I don't know how long ago, but you still played like said like 10, 12 hours of it. So I mean, it's a good game. I mean, the fact that it keeps your attention that long, just I think it's reflected. So for sure, it's definitely if you haven't yet, this is one of March's free PlayStation games of the month. So there's really no reason to not at least add this to your library and have it as a backlog game because it is a fun play. It's enjoyable, and there's no reason not to give it at least some love. It's a great game.
Especially if you've got a group of friends that you might want to play it with.
Oh, for sure. I mean, anytime you got a crew based game where you can play with all your friends. I mean, it just adds to that level of, I think, intrigue for me at least. So, anything else to add, guys?
Mm,
Nope, can't think of
Not
anything
from
else.
my perspective. It's so far this review has been fairly straightforward and as honest as it could be about the game itself.
Yeah. So, I think that's where we're at, guys. I think we got a 7.5 overall for Remnant, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you like what we're doing, be sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you guys next time.